So I already have this guy, but I just got most of the stuff from my friend. I've actually never made my own Terraria world, but I wanted to try. So goat. Wait, no. I'll use him. Might make a new world with him. Host size. Medium difficulty. Classic. Evil. Random. Crimson, right? Name. The yellow is the of death. Sure. Oh yeah, I forgot how long this takes. And I'm gonna be watching a video on beginner Terraria thing, since I'm not good at all. So
your game usually looks kinda like this. Would you rather it look more like this? Well, you're in luck, cause I got you covered.
I got you covered.
Hey there, my name is Salandrak, and welcome to my Beginner's Guide series for Terraria version 1.4 The Journey's End. Terraria has been around for just over 9 years, but recently got its final content update, and I thought this would be the perfect time to make a tutorial series for the game. In this video guide series, I will be covering various game mechanics and strategies, and will guide you along the path of progression through each stage of the game to the final goal of defeating the Moon Lord. In today's episode on Getting Started, we'll cover some of the game settings to consider, a few game mechanics you'll need to know about, and demonstrate some early game activities to get started on the right foot. All guides in this series will have timestamps down in the description, so feel free to jump around between topics as needed. And if you like this video, please consider hitting that like button, subscribing, and leaving comments below to help me grow the channel. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get started. Terraria is one of those games where there is so much to explore and do that if you don't have a good roadmap, it's easy to spin your wheels, get lost and frustrated with no idea what to do next. So let's start out with a good overview of what exactly you'll be doing in this game. For the most part, progression in Terraria revolves around exploring the world, finding loot, and crafting materials to improve your gear, so you can fight and defeat increasingly difficult enemies and bosses. This in turn will give you access to further improvements in gear to enable you to fight and defeat even more difficult enemies and bosses, so on and so forth, until you defeat the final boss, the Moon Lord, and then do whatever you want after that. The game as a whole is divided into two major sections, known as pre-hard mode, the state the world is in when you start the game, and hard mode, which is triggered by defeating the Wall of Flesh boss in the underworld. In pre-hard mode, you'll start out with only a few basic and nearly useless tools, and then through a combination of surface and cave exploration, you'll gather loot and mine ore to get basic weapons and armor. Once you're ready, it'll be time to start facing bosses. You'll begin with the Eye of Cthulhu, followed shortly after by either the Eater of Worlds, if your world has the Purplish Corruption evil biome, or the Brain of Cthulhu if you have the Gory Crimson evil biome.
How do you spawn them?
At some point, either before or after those two bosses, you'll likely run into the optional Slime King, and then you'll also want to take on the jungle's Queen Bee and defeat Skeletron to give you access to the dungeon. The only pre-hard mode boss after that is the Wall of Flesh, but there are a number of miscellaneous tasks you'll likely want to perform first, which we'll cover in a later video. But once you're ready, you'll head down to the underworld to defeat the Wall of Flesh, whose death will change your world forever. Most notably, entering hard mode will cause significantly stronger enemies to begin spawning throughout the world, will cause new swaths of your world evil biome as well as the magical hollow biome to appear, and both of which will start to spread. Hard mode will also allow you to smash evil altars to
Oh,
bless your
let's
world with
click
new,
play.
more powerful
Am I
ores to
only?
mine. And you'll then face a whole host of bosses and events as you grow stronger and stronger until at long last you defeat the final foe. But before we start slaying bosses, let's talk for a few minutes about some game settings and options. Here's a couple of settings tweaks I highly recommend to make your life a little bit easier. First and foremost, you should definitely adjust your cursor settings. The default cursor is a basic red color and can easily get lost on screen in the middle of hectic firefights with guns blazing. So do yourself a favor and go to the cursor settings and tweak things so that you have a high contrast border on your cursor. You'll thank me later. If you're playing with a keyboard, I would also change the key bindings for the quick heal to something closer to the default left-hand position, such as F, and put quick mana on something like G or V. In general settings, I recommend keeping auto pause off. With auto pause set to on, the game will always pause whenever you have your inventory open, and I find there are way more times I like to do things in the game with my inventory open than I would want the game to be paused, but feel free to experiment with what you feel most comfortable with. Now let's talk a little bit about character and world creation. The physical features of your character are purely cosmetic and for the most part can be changed in the game and aren't permanent, so just pick something you enjoy. The character's name, however, cannot be changed absent using some sort of a character editor. The most important settings, though, are the character type of either Journey, Classic, Medium Core, or Hardcore. If you're new to Terraria, I recommend that you start with a Classic character. Medium Core can be quite punishing unless you're very experienced, and with Hardcore, you'll just end up starting over a lot. As for Journey characters and worlds, that is a new option that was released with the 1.4 Journey's End update, and although Journey mode gives you a tremendous amount of control over your world and gameplay experience on the fly, I think it's much better to learn the game by playing through it at least once with the Classic character before spending much time in Journey mode. As for world settings, pick a name you like or smash the random name generator for something funny. Seed can also just be random. Beyond that, I recommend going with medium size, classic, or maybe expert difficulty, and a random evil biome. A small world is just too small to get the full experience, and a large world is just way too huge. Medium, on the other hand, is just right in my opinion. As for difficulty, there's nothing wrong with starting out in Classic. It has plenty of danger, and you'll likely die on a regular basis as you learn the ropes. That said, if you're up for a bit of an added challenge, feel free to dive in on Expert, or if you're really daring, go straight into Master Mode. I've played through all three and honestly enjoyed progressing sequentially through each difficulty level. And besides, whatever difficulty you start out in, if you find it too easy or too hard, you can always just make another world. As for the evil biome type, there are unique monsters and items to be found in the Crimson or the Corruption respectively, but for your first world, I would either leave it random or pick whichever. The first thing...
Mission Control, this is your mouth speaking. We have a bacteria problem. Polygen removes 10 times more bacteria.
You'll want to do upon entering your new world is the same thing you do in just about every survival adventure game. Start smacking some trees. You'll need a ton of wood throughout your adventures for things like platforms, torches, and all sorts of crafting materials, as well as making houses and fighting arenas. While you're chopping trees, you'll start to see slimes hopping their way across the screen. Definitely kill these, as they drop gel that you'll need to make torches, and if you find them near your guide, he'll help fend them off with his bow. Try using both your copper short sword as well as your copper pickaxe to fight. Although the sword does a little more damage, I find the pickaxe to be a bit easier to use, as it has a much larger hit area, and it also has auto swing, both of which make it extremely useful against enemies like slimes that like to try and jump over you. Once you have a couple hundred wood, go ahead and make a wooden workbench, which will allow you to craft a wooden broadsword and some basic armor. It looks terrible, but is better than nothing. Here's a brief note on item modifiers. Weapons and accessories have about a 75% chance to be assigned a random modifier when found or crafted. All accessory mods are good, while for weapons most are good, but some are bad. Later on, you'll be able to reforge your items to get a different random modifier for a fee with the Goblin Tinkerer NPC. But for now, just know that if you craft an item and get a bad modifier, try crafting it again to get at least no modifier or something positive. As for your original copper short sword, it's basically useless as a weapon, but don't throw it away just yet. If you look at its tooltip, you'll see it has the word material in its description. This means that it is an ingredient for making something else, and in this case, it is needed to make the most most powerful melee weapon in the game, the Zenith. This bad boy is crafted by combining 10 swords from throughout the game, including 2 from the Moon Lord himself. As a general rule, it's a good idea to save all items that have the material tag, because even if it isn't useful right now, it might be required for a great upgrade later. When in doubt, simply show any item to the guide NPC and he will show you every recipe the item is used in.
How do you craft? Let me just go to controller, finds, explore, use item, build, So okay, so yes. Hold it select. I'm done. Cursor.
That he will only show you the immediate item that can be crafted with a given ingredient, but many items can be further crafted into something else later on. Moral of the story, just save about everything, especially if it is material for something else. It's almost time to go out exploring, but first we need to make a basic defensive position for nighttime. Use your map to go back to your spawn point. There's a good chance you'll be warping back to that spot later on if you either die or use a recall item such as a recall potion or magic mirror. If that happens at nighttime and your spawn is out in the open, exposed terrain, there's a good chance you'll get surrounded by zombies, which will prove quite a challenge if you're undergeared, especially on higher difficulties. Making a basic defensive structure now will help avoid getting spawn camped and turning your spawn point into an early graveyard, which will only make your life even more difficult, as a graveyard causes some strong enemies to spawn all day long. All you need to avoid these headaches is to place a wall with a small ledge pointing outwards, a little less than half a screen away from the spawn point. Monsters only spawn within a small range just off the edges of your screen, so by placing these walls, you'll ensure that if you do warp back to your spawn point, no zombies will be able to reach you. Just keep your eyes out for any flying demon eyes, and you'll be able to easily survive until morning. And if you knock out the lower 2 blocks of your walls, you can easily kill the zombies with impunity. Note that you could also just make a little house to keep the monsters out, but if it's at surface level, you'll have to endure zombies banging on your door all night long. Once your basic defenses are set up, it's time to prepare for exploration. I recommend building at least 100 platforms and as many torches as you can. You'll need torches to light your way in caves, and platforms will help you get up and down large drop-offs. Once you're all set, pick a direction and start running. There are several things you might come across as you head out into the world. If you go far enough, you'll eventually run into a new biome, such as a desert, a snowy tundra, or your world's evil biome. Be extremely careful in these biomes, particularly the evil biome, as the monsters are quite a bit stronger than the slimes you faced so far. Whatever biome you find, see if you can gather up some of its unique trees, as the wood variants can be used to make slightly stronger armor that has the added bonus of looking a whole lot better. You can also make a slightly better sword, and if you haven't already, go ahead and make a bow for a ranged damage option. If you find a snowy tundra biome early on,
Okay. That's exactly where I wanted to be.